welcome back. Here we are to continue talking about CSS. And, in our last couple videos, we started styling the CSS Zen Garden page. And so here's my example page. And I've gotten a little ways into this. I styled the font, or I used a custom font from Google Fonts. We set some font colors and the font size for some of the headings. Let's talk about like what are our goals when we set these font styles, right? So, it's one thing to say like, oh, I made a font, and I or defined the font styles and I think they look good. But it's another thing to say, I set these font styles because I have a purpose, like I'm trying to communicate an idea, okay? So let's talk about that. I'm going to go back to the lesson here, and there's a section after font pairing. We're going to come back to this font pairing, I think, also, but after font pairing, there's a section here that says type hierarchy, okay? And this is a really important idea, okay? So the idea of a hierarchy is like showing something and then getting people to read it in a certain order, okay? So you want to say like what is most important here, right? So when someone goes to a page, they're not going to read all the text there. They're going to skim it and kind of just scan it with their eyes, and certain things are going to jump out to them. Okay? And we as designers and, product developers, we want to, communicate with our audience as quickly as possible the ideas that we think are important and that we think are going to be important to our audience, right? And we can do that through visual hierarchy. So, the hierarchy, determines like what people are going to see and how they're going to read our page and the ideas that they're going to take away first. And if those ideas get their interest, then, maybe we're going to convert them into a customer, or maybe we're going to convince them of our whatever we're trying to convince them of, right? So, I found this article here and I thought it was really good. Take a look at this right here, and I'll skim over it really quick, but you go back and read this really closely. But this is kind of an image here that describes concepts or ideas of visual hierarchy, or they say building blocks of visual hierarchy, right? In our case today, we're not going to be able to use all of these because we haven't covered some of these CSS topics yet, but a few of these apply directly to what we're doing, right? So it says 10 building blocks of visual hierarchy, okay? So first of all, the first building block is size, right? So number one is size. So it's a little hard to read with the contrast here, but this text is larger than this text and it's larger than this one, so we should read this first, right? Okay, great. So that's good for us, right? We can apply that directly, font size, right? Next, and also maybe it could be font weight too, right? Because, bolder fonts are larger, they're a little wider, right? Okay. Number two, color. I'd like to modify this to say contrast. Okay, so color and contrast work together. Contrast is the difference between values, right? So like if we put something black on top of something white, then the black thing stands out because there's a lot of contrast. You have the maximum value difference, right? Okay. In this case, like if we read this, I don't really think that the color right here is so much different than the contrast, right? Like the white text here pops out more than this red text because there's more contrast with it in the background. These two elements here, the second and third line, they're closer in value to the background, right? Though color is important. So when I look at the top here and I see this red heart, it pops out because it's red against the background. The same thing over here when it says publisher DM. This is larger and the color pops out in the background. It's got contrast and it's got color. So this actually pops out more than publisher, right? So publisher is bold and it's black against white, but this also has some vibrant color and it's larger. So, you can mix these things together to get the effect that you want and to guide your viewer's eye through your design, right? And communicate your ideas along the way. Okay, so layout. So we're not going to do any layout yet. We're going to do it later in class, but for this example, we're just working on fonts. So this really doesn't affect us here, but here you can see that the text here is in a different position. So we kind of catch this line first, right? Space. So if we put space around something, then, it pops out and it stands apart from the other elements, right? So space is good. Like this has some space, so we kind of read this. Again, we'll hit on this stuff later when we get into layout and box model and things like that, right? Um, they put contrast here. I think really what they mean with this contrast, I was thinking color contrast up above, but down here when they talk about contrast, they're saying the contrast in fonts. So if you have, you know, uh, text that is styled in one style and text with a different style, if there's a contrast, a strong difference in between those two styles, then your type stands apart, right? So this could be font weight, it could be font family, it could be maybe line height, it could be character spacing or letter spacing, right? That's another. We didn't actually cover that property yet, but we can add space between letters. So think about styling your font and creating a contrast between it and the neighboring fonts, and then that'll make it pop out, right? Um, this is also style, so this text is kind of on a weird, like stair step or something that creates some attention, right? Um, and then they have symmetry and similarity and grouping. These don't affect us so much here, right? But I think that for us, the important thing is size and color and contrast, right? Okay, so think about those things. Let's take a look at some other sites for a moment, right? So I'm going to just pull up, actually, let's just go look at the Google font site. So this is kind of I'm going to go to the top here. I guess maybe this isn't really a great example for this because they're trying to show off the fonts. But that said, when I look at this, I can see that they're using color to make these buttons stand out, to show me that those things are selected or they're the current option that we're viewing. This is the text that they want me to read, so the type in here is larger, right? And then when I read this, it says the name of the font up here. So this is like first, and then I'm going to read Montserrat or Poppins or Railway second, right? So I'll see the font first, I'll see the name of the font second, and then underneath it, I'll see the name of the designer, right? Indian Type Foundry, John Pinhorn, right? Julieta Lunovsky, Sol Matas, and Juan Pablo de la Peral, right? Or whatever their names are, right? So, so I'm going to see that next, and then I have this tiny little, thing up here, and that's the last thing I see in this box, and it says 18 styles, right? So I think they're doing a pretty good or a pretty good job here. If all of this stuff was the same font size, it would be very hard for me to take this apart and understand it quickly, right? So at a glance, though, I can see there's the font, there's the name, there's the designer, and oh yeah, and it's got 18 styles, right? Let's take a look at another site, right? So let's pick a random site. I'm going to go to FedEx.com, right? Okay, FedEx, right? Here we are. So what do I see here? Well, they have a strong color. So this color pops out. So it shows me the header, and that gives me the options that I have, right? So I can see what I want to, what I can do here. I can check shipping, I can check tracking, I can look at design and print, right? These come up second. So first I'm going to see FedEx. I'm going to see this header because it has color, right? And then if I look in the middle section here, track is probably their most popular option, so they color that. It stands apart from the two options on either side, right? Um, what can I do here? I can ship, manage, and track and deliver, right? So they're putting this text larger, but it's kind of in the background because it doesn't have any contrast or color or anything to make, or style to make it stand out from everything else, right? So I kind of see this next even though it's larger, okay? If I scroll down the page, you can see like here's like a very simple idea. We have a heading, the text is larger, so it pops out and it says, hey, we're working towards a more sustainable world. So it tells me what they're doing. And then if I want to read more about that, I can read the smaller text here, right? And like we always see links and they have an underline and they have a style to them too. but I can see this link right here, it looks a little different from the text around it. So this is like some contrast, making it pop out from the background. So they gave it a little, I don't know, I can't tell if that's a slightly heavier font or just the color is different, right? Um, and they've done the same thing through the rest of the page, right? So we see the button here is in color, so that kind of pops up so I can start a return, right? Because people probably use that option a lot. I can see send it back in a snap is coming up second, and then I have, if I want to read some more details about how to do that, I can do that, right? So, so there we go. Hey, let's take a look at another site. What if we look at GitHub, right? So here's my GitHub page. GitHub, like, it has some contrast, like we have the heading up here, but the text here is pretty small, so it doesn't pop out as much, and then these things are all about the same size. Let's go to another page here. What if I look at my profile page there, right? Oh, here's my profile page. So what do I see here? Well, I see my image there. This is set by the user, so the colors here maybe could be anything, but underneath it, I see my name, right? So my name is here, it's larger, it's bold, it stands out above my username, right? So there's my username, and then underneath it I have some other options. So these are the organizations that I'm in, right? And these come up like third, right? And then the same thing here. If I look at the top here, this is kind of bolder and darker, and then it has the red underline. So this is the current page that we're on, right? And then over here I see the pinned repositories, and if I look in this box, I can see that it has a hierarchy. It's got the name of the project, it's got a description of the project, and then underneath it has some other options, and there's something I can do in the corner here, right? So anyway, hopefully that gives you some ideas. Maybe we'll actually, just for fun, let's look at one more. Stack Overflow, you probably go here all the time, right? Let's take a quick look at Stack Overflow, right? But you're kind of getting the idea, hopefully, right? We're going to control how someone views this page by creating a hierarchy in the type that we put there, okay? And the hierarchy, we create it by using size, color, font style, contrast, okay? And then there's position and some other things, right? So if I look at this, I can see like top questions and ask a question, right? So this is a button, it's blue, it's got a lot of color, it's got a lot of contrast, it stands out. I'm going to probably see this first and top questions next, right? And then if I look inside a question here, in this row, I can see that, React.js material UI text field is probably going to pop out to me first, and then underneath it I can see the tags, and then I can kind of read this other stuff on the periphery, right? So your goal with the Zen Garden page is to do the same thing, okay? So why don't you think about that? Think about how you can use the concepts of visual hierarchy that are in the document here, right? And you can read more about this, right? And check out this picture. It's kind of a good diagram. And then use that and try and apply those ideas to your page. And really, to get started, ask yourself, like, what should people be reading first? It's a good question, right? So what do I want them to see first? And then, try and design it so that people will read it in that order, right? You can also explore some of the designs here and look at how these designers use their visual hierarchy, okay? And maybe take some inspiration from those. So anyway, so that was kind of a long discussion, but take those ideas, try them on your own, and then we'll continue in the next video. So thanks for watching.